Shalom and welcome. U.S. President Barack Obama and Secretary of State Hillary Clinton have made it clear that the U.S. now wants a total freeze on construction in Judea and Samaria. They're calling the settlements illegal, the communities of Judea and Samaria, and they're calling it an occupation. The question is this a violation of U.S. law? Joining me today is attorney Howard Grief, who has spent years researching Israel's borders and legal rights. Mr. Grief has a new book called The Legal Foundation and Borders of Israel Under International Law. Mr. Grief, welcome.
Pleasure to be here.
Obama is certainly turning up the pressure on Israel. You claim this violates U.S. law.
Yes, because the United States in the 1924 treaty recognized all the Jewish rights to the land of Israel, then called Palestine, in Hebrew, Eretz Israel. And one of those rights, of course, was the right of settlement. In fact, this was the principal means to create the Jewish state. This was Article 6 of the mandate for Palestine, and without the right of settlement, there could not have been any Jewish state, and that was the whole purpose of the mandate. Of course, they called it the Jewish national home, but the actual purpose was to create a Jewish state, and the means to accomplish that was through settlement of the land, the close settlement of the land, and that's written specifically in Article 6 of the mandate, and also Article 11 of the mandate refers to it too.
All right, so let's go back to basics. The world is calling Israel's presence in Judea and Samaria illegal. They're calling it occupation. What exactly is international law regarding the communities of Judea and Samaria?
Well, there was a number of agreements, diplomatic agreements, and legal agreements made in the years 1919. Actually, well, even before then, but let's start with 1919 to 1924. And these agreements allowed Jews to settle all through Mandate Palestine. To say that Jews don't have a legitimate right to settle anywhere in Palestine or land of Israel is a gross mistake and a lie. This was, as I said just before, the basis of the mandate. The Jews were entitled. And in the law of Israel, we have called the law of return. I mean, today it's strange. The Arabs talk about the right of return. They have no right of return, but the Jews have a right of return. And this was the basis of the basis that the principal Allied powers who fought Ottoman Turkey in World War I agreed to have the Jews come back to Palestine to settle. It was the historical connection of the Jewish people with the land, and this involved the right of return. The right of return actually is the right to immigrate to Palestine, which was also in Article 6. Article 6 contains both the right to immigrate, that's the right of return, and the right to settle. And in 1950, David Ben-Gurion had enacted through the Knesset the law of return, which gave the right of Jews to settle anywhere in the land of Israel. Of course, in 1950, we didn't have Judea, Samaria, and Gaza because Jordan had conquered it illegally through aggression in 1948, and they annexed it in April 1950. So the right was unexercisable between 1948 and 1967, when Israel repossessed the land in the June War of the Six-Day War. Then the right revived itself, and Jews were entitled to settle anywhere in the land of Israel, both under Israeli constitutional law as well as under international law.
And this is still in place today?
Yes, the right of return was enacted by the Knesset, and the rights of settlement are in the international agreements that I referred to before. In 1920, on April 24th and 25th, the representatives of the principal Allied powers, the Supreme Council of the principal Allied powers, met and decided to carve up the Ottoman Turkish Empire. the Arab states, and no Arab states existed before then, except the Hejaz, which is in the western part of Arabia, was declared itself independent in 1916. But all this is a result of the developments of World War I. So the Arab states came into existence at the same time as Palestine was allocated to the Jewish people, and it's all based on the same law and the same agreement, and that was that was manifested in the San Remo Resolution of April 24, 25, 1920. Under that resolution, Mesopotamia, that later changed its name to Iraq, and Syria were to become eventually independent states, and Palestine was allotted exclusively to the Jewish people. That was written in the minutes of the conference of the San Remo Resolution, something that it really was forgotten for most of these years. I was the person who revived this idea that the Allies allotted the Jewish people the land of Palestine based on the historical connection of the Jewish people with the land. And this idea I put out in the mid-'80s, but I wrote about it more extensively in the '90s and in my book, and now it's become commonplace. The San Remo Resolution, what it did was it transformed the Balfour Declaration, which was an act of British policy, into an act of international law.
Okay, so one more time, what exactly are the legal borders of the State of Israel?
According to my research and what I believe, the idea adopted by the Supreme Council of the Principal Allied Powers at the San Remo Conference, San Remo in Italy, the idea was to allot Palestine in its historical dimensions to the Jewish people, and other countries were allotted to the Arabs. Syria and Mesopotamia and the Arabian Peninsula, these countries were designated for Arab independence. But Palestine was allotted. Now, what did Palestine mean? Palestine was referred to wherever the Jews had an historical connection to the land, which meant wherever they had settled and governed the land in the first and second temple periods. So this encompassed a big area. It included the land where the Jews had settled. Therefore, it included all of what's called Cisjordan or Western Palestine, and good parts of Eastern Palestine, especially the lands of Gilead and Bashan north of the Yarmouk River, and in southern Lebanon where the tribes of Asher, Naphtali, and Dan had settled. Now, what happened is that Britain and France entered into negotiations on the borders of their respective mandated territories. France had the mandate for Syria, and they subdivided it into Syria and Lebanon. And Britain had the mandate for Palestine and Mesopotamia that became Iraq. So they made an agreement on December 23rd, 1920, but they did not include all the lands that were historically connected to the Jewish people. France was extremely anti-Semitic, and I mentioned some of it in the book. They uttered very anti-Semitic statements, and they were against a Jewish state in its historical dimensions, and they refused to give the land that was south of the Litani River, because all of the British officials, and that included Prime Minister Lloyd George.
The Litani River, that's in southern Lebanon.
Yes, all of southern Lebanon should have been included in Palestine, mandated Palestine. It wasn't for one reason only, because France, to its everlasting shame, took a strong anti-Jewish stance and refused to abide by what was agreed at the San Remo Resolution. The French government, and they apologized for it in 1956, by the way, they decided they would abide by the illegal Sykes-Picot Agreement, which castrated Palestine into many small areas. And the Six-People Agreement was totally illegal because it was a division of the Ottoman Empire even before the Ottoman Empire was defeated and crushed in World War I. They had no right to divide the land.
This was before San Remo.
Yes, France based itself on the Six-People Agreement. The San Remo resolution replaced the Six-People Treaty, but France refused to honor what it agreed to at the San Remo Peace Conference. And so the borders of the Jewish state were to encompass all the land that the Jews had settled and governed during the First and Second Temple periods, and not all of the land was included, but at least as a partial compensation for what France did, Britain extended the borders of eastern Palestine to the desert, so that it included a large chunk of what was called Transjordan.
So what realistically can be done to ensure Israel's international rights?
Well, in my humble opinion, I believe there are two options. One is a very direct option to try to sue the United States administration for violating our rights in an American court. After all, the U.S. recognized our rights to Judaism in Gaza in the 1924 treaty and also in the 1922 joint congressional resolution known as the Lodge-Fish or Fish-Lodge resolution, which actually is an act of law because it was a joint congressional resolution signed by President Harding, and that was later extended by the 1924 treaty, which specifically recognized Jewish rights. Now, the 1924 treaty became part of the U.S. Supreme Law, according to the U.S. Constitution. Therefore, it may be possible for an American citizen living in Israel to sue the United States government for not recognizing his rights to settle and live in Judaism area. That's one possible option. I first put out this idea in an article I wrote in 2003, and I also had mentioned this back in the 1990s verbally. That's one option. A second option, because the United States is a government of checks and balances, there is an alternative source of power in the U.S. Congress that doesn't have to follow blindly the lead of the Obama administration, and Israel would have to seek support there among sympathetic congressmen to counter what Obama is trying to do in regard to telling Israel that they have no right to settle areas of the Jewish national home that was internationally recognized in the San Remo resolution and in the Mandate for Palestine and in the Boundary Convention of December 23rd, 1920, and was recognized by the United States itself in the 1924 treaty. So those two options remain.
Howard Grief, author of Legal Foundation and Borders of Israel under International Law, thank you for joining us.
Happy to be here.
And shalom from all of us at Israel Independent TV News.